So, delivering SuDS in the urban environment. So, we start with a few questions and setting the scene of how we approach projects. So, a good decision is based on knowledge, which is the purpose of the SuDS manual. Purpose of the SuDS manual, and to inform the decision process and the design process. Adversely, imagination is more important than knowledge. As a designer, it informs the creative process, which is so important when you're meeting the aspirations of clients, of the rest of the design team, and also the future user of a space. For us, as a practice, SuDS combines knowledge and imagination. That enables us to innovate and push boundaries and make projects bigger and better. Through that process, we find that SuDS inspires urban design. It's not just a design process, it's not just a design component, it inspires our work. It reconnects people and nature, which is so important in livable urban spaces. It evokes happiness, which helps people engage with their environment. It evokes exploration, which educates minds even, and reveals the underlying systems of a landscape. And it can evoke wonder. We can combine a practical landscape to create beautiful landscapes that we wouldn't necessarily achieve if we were purely doing an aesthetic. The following 4 projects demonstrate how we have used SuDS to inspire a project, not just inform it or use it as a design tool. I'm going to talk about the Hive, Bath Western Riverside, Hart and Keys Park, and Bristol Harbourside. The Hive is a public building and library in Worcester. And as you can see from the photo, it's in a town centre location on the banks of the River Severn. The public function and town centre location meant that constant access was required. However, the floodplain location may challenge that access. Our design approach was to combine both, accommodate both, allow the floodplain to flood, and always maintain access. The result was a series of attenuation basins that could work with the floodplain and maintain access at all times. These attenuation basins were framed by belvederes, punctuated by islands, and traversed by elevated walkways. Within the basins, we used damped grasslands that were mown into patterns inspired by the local pottery. As the water fills the basins, the pattern is revealed in different ways and gradually disappears. But then it reveals a new landscape, a new dynamic landscape and riverscape that surrounds the building whilst the public can still access the building. Perfect, because now it's the next project. Okay, so Bath Western Riverside, or Bath Riverside, in the centre of the city, on the banks of the River Avon. It's a post-industrial site and has no relationship with the river that runs through it. So, our inspiration was to make the river the heart of this new urban district, relate all the design moves, all the new residential areas to that river. Phase 1 has now been completed of a 5 years implementation plan, and it's created public spaces that engage with the river, physically and visually, linking the old and the new. And we allow them to flood. They're designed to flood, they're detailed to flood, which means that we had to detail it very cleverly to ensure it could be maintained, resilient, and have longevity. Hart and Keys Park in South Shields on the Tyne Estuary was another project where we had contaminated land and we had the complications of having to deal with the floodplain level. The inspiration was to create a new urban topography where we allowed access through the park whilst raising the development level out of the floodplain. It's a great example of a very simple move for SuDS completing a project. We used SuDS channels to collect and convey the surface water runoff, but we also ended up making the landform stronger and more accentuated through those channels. And we were able to use local providence planting within the channels, so it had an educational value. The channels also provided elements for integrated art within the park, which made us, with the twin town, sorry, forgot the name of it, I can never say that word, Noisy-le-Sec. And it was beautiful. It kind of made the project for us. We were very pleased. Final case study, I'm going too fast, is Bristol Harbourside, which has taken 15 years to implement. So the image on the left is the original site in 1994, post-industrial, contaminated, so we ended up having to cap it. And then 15 years later, the site as it is today. There's lots of green, but all those elements are SuDS elements. It's formed an integrated system across multiple plots, so multiple developers delivering plots individually, but delivering a vision for SuDS, which we master planned and have gradually implemented. The end result is green walls, extensive tree planting, podium decks with attenuation, pervious surfaces, including lawns over podiums where possible, but it also required more innovative features. We wanted to make ecology part of the city landscape and use the SuDS to help us do that. So we used concepts of floating gardens that would help cleanse the water as it ran off the hard surfaces and entered the harbour. This also had the added benefit of creating biodiversity, new habitats, and community amenities. Other features include public spaces, where we wanted to express the narrative of drainage from roofscape through public spaces down to the harbour. It included details about the collection, the conveyance, the drainage through the spaces, as well as letting people see the water as it collected through the main public walkways. The end result was dynamic, memorable spaces that have become cherished in the community. For us, what's the future of SuDS? Dynamic cityscapes that think about SuDS on a city level, an integrated whole management system. We want to think about it on a district level, joined up thinking the full water management cycle, including buildings, landscape, and experience. Thank you.